Hello from the dung heap, everybody. These are my friends. A lot of
Hi,
them.
friends.
There he is. Hi, sweetie.
Hello. Good morning, everybody.
And we're live. Hello. SPTV. Hello.
Good morning, folks, or afternoon as it might be.
Yes. Hi. Oh, I'll move this over a little bit.
Yeah, it's
We got
obscure
this big apparatus here. Hi, everybody. Great to see you all. Sorry we're a little bit late. We were kind of scrambling, making our tea and getting ready, and thought, why not wait till Natalie was done over at Life After a Cult, because I really wanted to listen to what she was talking about. And so, yeah, here we are. Hey, everybody. Hey, Alan Valentine, the two lovebirds. We got Hef.
Yeah, I got to put my glasses on. I could read this.
I know I can barely see because I'm kind of far back.
Hello,
Mark
Janet.
Hartman, hey there. Destiny, hey, everybody.
June.
Yeah, good to see everybody.
Yeah. Popping in.
So I was a little bit lazy with the thumbnail, but I think I might change it. Like, what should we call this stream? Like, how our marriage survived a cult?
Yeah, that's not a bad try.
Or not bad try.
Well, so a lot of things. That was one of the early ones.
Yeah,
sure.
We'll come up with something clever. So in the spirit of Valentine's Day, we thought we would come on and talk about our unique experience. It's fairly unique, I think, because meeting in a cult as adults, like I was in my early 20s, you were in your early 30s when we met, and just the way everything was structured or non-structured, it was very oppressive.
Yeah, and got more so as time went along, but somehow we were meant to be because we survived all of that, and we're still here almost 20 years later. So
yeah, well, it'll be 28 years.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So what is your memory of when we started? Okay, so we met in the cult. You had a relationship with, well, we'll just say her name, Joey. Nobody would know who she is.
Yeah.
And then I was like kind of super friendly with Shannon, a guy, and we went on this trip when we first started. When I was first living at Door of Hope, we went on this trip to Virginia Beach. We don't have to talk about that whole thing, but it was a misadventure, but we were kind of coupled up like ourselves with other people. And then both of those relationships fell apart. We weren't even really allowed to have relationships that weren't ordained by the ministry leadership, aka Marlene. And so that was really weird because we were, even when you were in a quote relationship, like you had to be celibate, until you were married. But we were single for the longest time, right before we got together. It was
very strange. You really couldn't date or do anything remotely similar to it. So our extent of our dating was like meeting to have tea at various times during the day or go for walks occasionally. I don't know if that was sanctioned or not at the time, but
it was, as long as like we would hold hands, and then if a car came, because we didn't want to be somebody that would tattle on us, we would stop holding hands all of a sudden, like, oh my God. But yeah, I remember even before like we were allowed to quote date, we weren't really allowed to date until we were pretty much engaged.
Yeah.
And before you were shipped off to Georgia for like a couple of months, you had gone on that trip to Alaska. It's funny because going full circle to his second Alaska trip, which was just a couple weeks ago, it brought up a lot of memories of how we got together, because he went on that trip and we had just started to kind of realize after 4 years that we kind of liked each other in that way. And I remember that I had kind of had like this sort of relationship. It wasn't ordained. It was a mess. It was mess. It was a mess. I shouldn't have gone together with that guy, and I didn't. I wasn't allowed to anyways. But I remember just realizing that you were just such a good friend and you were always there for me and you'd always fix my car. And then I think when I fell in love with you was like the flea story. So guys, you remember this?
Yeah, I do.
So I don't know if I've told this story before, but I was in this certain room in the inn that I really, really loved. I called it the sunny room. And it was like the middle front of the room. And you had a nice
the whole
one in the
front
corner.
part of this building faced basically southeast or whatever. And the sun would rise there. It was beautiful. And the other side of the building was the dark side, kind of, where you didn't get any
I was always in the dark side. And sometimes I would get to be in the sunny side for like a month or two. And then Marlene would punish me and throw me back to the dark side. So when this lady who had a little dog, she moved up back to Canada, I was moved in the dark side of that room, and it was filled with fleas. And I was like told that it was God's punishment and that I was making it up, and I was covered in flea bites, and they wouldn't like help me do anything about it. And like it was like they were rolling their eyes and just being assholes to me. And all of a sudden, like I went to work one day because you and I were the only ones working the whole place. And I came home and you told me like not to go in my room for a while and that you had the windows open because you had gone and got flea bombs. I know I'm crying over fleas, guys, but that was the nicest thing that anybody ever did for me and Door of Hope. Was to rescue me from the pestilence.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. From the pestilence and the plague.
And I remember one time I was sick and I was just kind of thinking out loud. I was like, I really wish I had some ginger ale. And he like went in his room and he like produced this giant bottle of ginger ale. So I realized that like I had felt compassion like that in a long time. And so we started talking, and then whenever like we started talking, I felt like we weren't allowed to ever talk like in that way.
No, any kind of actual privacy was sort of shunned. Well, I realized, they were governed by this strange. I think a lot of just as an aside, like in a cult type setting, like I think a lot of people start out with the idea they think they're doing good for humanity and they're moving in love, but there's a lot of fear blended in with it, which is true about almost any type of relationship. It's a mixture, but with them, it was like religious leaders very often they want control and they think they're trying to help you. And maybe deep down, some part of them is trying to help you, but they don't realize they're governed by fear. They're afraid of people getting away with things or things going bad or whatever. So they try to control and restrain everybody. And ultimately, that's what destroys the institution or the organization because they're trying to control you to death. They're so afraid you're going to mess everything up that they don't want you to have any freedom. And then ultimately you rebel because you don't have any freedom. So we sort of had to navigate that without really understanding all that and try to stay out of trouble because as we've probably told the stories of all getting called before the board and the tribunal meetings. And if they suspected, and one thing that was really weird is the idea that they felt like they were directly connected to God and always hearing from God. So they would have these, how did they describe it? Like they would basically have an inclination or some sense that you were in the wrong.
From the Lord.
They'd have a word.
And you'd have like basically a full-on tribunal. You'd be sitting in a chair and they would all surround you and
kind of interrogate
these terrible scriptures and tell you, and they'd like lay hands on you and get a word. It was always like this terrible thing. You were in rebellion, and
we have this thing we call Bible roulette, and it's honestly, it's seriously how some people function. It's sort of like, I don't know, not exactly like tarot cards or dice or whatever, but basically it just flipped the Bible randomly open, usually to the Old Testament, some really dark, judgmental scripture.
Jeremiah.
The Israelites wandering in the wilderness and being ordered to keep wandering for another 40 years until their whole generation dies out. And this is the kind of nice stuff that got laid on us. So it would be like, if they suspected that your heart wasn't pure, they would hear from God. You wouldn't tend to hear from God this way, but they would tend to, conjure up some scripture that was really dark and negative to keep you in fear. And then you'd go away like, oh my God, and we were believing that these people actually, they would pray and meditate and fast and go up in the high places and hear from God. That because it was this analogy of like Moses going up on the mountain and getting, the word from God and getting the tablets and coming down and getting angry when he saw you worshiping idols and all this kind of stuff. So that's kind of the mentality that prevailed there.
Yeah. You get almost like you get frozen, kind of, you're relying on them to tell you.
Yeah. You felt like
you're okay and what to do and who to love and who to be friends with and what your future is. And, Natalie was talking about that this morning about like, that's very culty when people are telling you.
Well, the middleman thing, like Jesus, and I don't know the scripture for this one, but I know it's somewhere hiding in the Bible, but there's this idea that when Jesus came that you didn't need to go through some other person. Like in the Old Testament days, you would go through prophets and seers and, somebody else was the one that stood between you and God. Well, when Jesus came, he basically said, that's the Old Testament. That's an old way. That's done with. And now you can come straight to God. That was kind of the message. So, and even Jesus said, like, don't call anyone master or teacher, or don't, worship man, basically. Don't. So to me, one of my freedom from cult things was just realizing like if you interpret Christianity properly in the New Testament way, you realize that the Old Testament no longer applies. Jesus was the fulfillment of the Old Testament. He came and cleared the way so that we have direct access to God. That's my interpretation of that. So it sets us free. You can go to God directly. You don't need some middleman. You don't need the Pope or this might offend Catholics and everything. I'll take the risk of saying that anytime you have a guru or a cult leader or even a legitimate church person, in a sense, you don't need to go through them to get to God, according to what Jesus said. So you don't need that. But we were put under a thing where these people were sort of the intermediaries. They'd go to God, and then they were always more holy than you because they had the time to fast and pray and go up on the mountain and drive somewhere far away and spend days there just praying and fasting and doing stuff we were too human to be able to handle. Like we were working. The idea of fasting for days, and I did it sometimes. It was miserable. I hate fasting. Now I joke about it. My form of fasting now is just eating fast.
I know. I said that's the F word.
It's the F word.
And just to clarify, we're not picking on Catholics. We got to make sure.
I'm not trying to pick on anybody.
Most Catholics I know are a lot more free than we were. Like that's for sure. Like I think they
had indulgences.
They do whatever
they got away with anything and just go confess it. So at the confession,
I kind of like that.
You can just dump it and start over the next day.
I wanted to read something that, because I know all about this whole Bible roulette thing. Close your eyes and point, and they can twist the Bible to whatever their narrative is. Absolutely. So we had a little bit of a show and tell thing. I wanted to, maybe talk about that. Yeah. But can we just do a few greetings first, and then we'll do that? Because that's going to probably be another reason for me to cry. Just thinking about it. All right, let me see. We got our friend Joel. I was very surprised my wife got me a guitar for Valentine's Day. Awesome. Congratulations. He already has like, how many do you have now? That's awesome. Oh my goodness, look. Thank you so much, Destiny.
Nice,
5 new cups. It's raining cups. Hallelujah. It's raining cups. Amen. You're supposed to dance.
Oh, okay. That's usually been your thing, but
just kidding. Yay.
Oh, that's cool.
And still clap.
Yeah, we appreciate.
He's hitting the desk.
Yeah, I was clapping my hands.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah, just out of sight.
That's hilarious. Yeah. This is fun. Yes, Natalie was on fire today. Absolutely. I loved everything she had to say. And the point she made, and it was so cute because did you see the part where she did the phone call? I don't know. I was kind of in and out with my phone.
Oh, yeah. I'm not really
she did a little phone call about like she has this little cult hotline. And she's like, hello, life after a call. And then it's usually people like asking, like they're in like CrossFit or something and asking if they're in a cult, And then it was today was somebody like telling her who to be friends with and all that. She's like, I don't think so, kind of hung up. But it was great how she framed it, because it's so true that in the cult we had everything pretty much controlled, especially since we were in a Sea Org kind of situation where everything, like what we ate, when we slept, what we did, who we were friends with, who we talked to, everything we did, especially who we were going to marry. I think the one advantage that we had that I've heard that a lot of the Sea Org members don't have is that we did know each other pretty well, because we lived in the same place for like 5 years, even though we lived separately and we weren't like allowed to fraternize or whatever. But I think we knew each other as people. Like, you knew my weaknesses, like you knew how emotional I was.
We all did live together, so you couldn't really hide who you were, and everybody, it's funny. I mean, there were not a ton of us in there, so you really did get to know everybody pretty well. And in any kind of live-in organization, you kind of have to have a framework and rules, and we had shower times and schedules, and who would clean the bathrooms, and I mean, in a way, it kind of had
with
to be
my bare
way.
hands with no gloves in the toilet bowl with a little sponge.
So they were very militant about. They love to use ammonia and everything, which really doesn't clean that well in most cases.
Loopy.
But, so we're always breathing chemicals and
unsanctioned walks with hand holding.
Oh man, that's like
my pearls. I know.
Double charges there.
I know.
Big trouble.
I got pregnant. Oh my God. I had a friend.
Hey, when that happens.
That she was from like Iowa or something. She thought that you could get pregnant, but if you went through a cornfield and fell on an ear of corn. You can get Barbara.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Should say her name.
Rodney corn, you gotta watch out.
Oh my goodness. That's great. Sorry, I can't really see that well today.
No, disclaimer. Yeah, the boys played out last
night. No, we're holding it right now. Oh no. Okay, we don't want to know about that. That's personal. Awesome. Anna from Canada, thank you so much for being a cup for 9 months. Awesome. Oh, it's bringing up pregnancy. No, just kidding. I adore you, Marilyn. Aw, thank you. Thank you for being here. I adore you too. Oh, okay. Okay, I'm gonna put it up there anyways. It's funny. That wasn't his hand. Janet won the internet today. Yep. It's hilarious. I love that they're in the chat. Oh, hey, Alicia. Love you. Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you. Good to see you. Glad you're here.
Stay Spirit is coming there. Pretty sure Moses just went up there, that mountain, for a quiet smoke. Of course he did.
Exactly. I love that y'all's love prevailed. Yeah, we had our times, but we've gotten through it. A flea story. I love it. I know the flea story. Yeah, we have some other stories like that. As an animal, it makes me giggle. Oh, that's right. Foster mama. That's right. Moses went that mountain for a quiet smoke. That's hilarious. Asen, when you control who can be together, you make sure that the couples have at least one super loyal who will choose the cult over the partner. Yeah. In the thick minds of cult leader. It makes sense. Yeah, you're right. And it just was so weird. She'd be like, oh, well, maybe it's not the right time. She's like, remember her crystal ball was a little bit cloudy. She's like, I don't know if you're meant to be together, but maybe someday. So it was like, okay, so what? We got to wait. And then meanwhile, all her relatives were getting married.
Yeah. They were somehow exempt.
From they were exempt from all the rules. They could just do whatever they wanted.
Get away with it.
You still, my feet are getting cold. Okay, I can't really read because you knocked my socks out, right? These pickup lines.
Yeah.
That was awesome. That's great.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So, this is a hard one to tell. About your first trip to Alaska when you went with your dad, and while you were there, you got some souvenirs.
Yeah, that's kind of heart-wrenching. I don't even want to go there because a couple of things were going on. One of which was I was under the whole cult control thing. So even though I was going on this amazing first-class trip that my folks had planned this trip out, and it was sort of like a nice, like a inside passage cruise up along the coast of Canada and everything, and then trains, planes, and automobiles to every place, and a beautifully planned trip. And it was very busy. So we were staying in nice places and everything. And it was just handed to me because my folks were about to go. And then one night, like my mom had thrown her back out really badly and realized she wasn't going to be able to go and was about to cancel the trip. And then at the last minute realized since I was a little kid, I'd always wanted to go to Alaska. It was like my dream. And all of a sudden she calls one night and says, "Hey, do you want to go to Alaska?" And I'm like, on the one hand, I feel terrible for her that she can't go. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, hell yeah, I'm not going to pass this up. So then I ended up going. But the weirdest part was, so we're going to this sort of like ascetic cult church thing where you're supposed to give up your life for God and sacrifice and basically just become nobody, nothing, and to please God.
Yeah, we're eating like the equivalent of rice and beans for us was like burnt pea soup or corn chowder.
Yeah, everything. They would ruin really the things that were basically what we had to eat when we were fasting.
When we weren't fasting. Right. That's how we would break a fast. It was disgusting. And so like that's what we were used to. This really like austere.
Yeah, and what was particularly painful about it for me was the fact that I have a hard time with cognitive dissonance. And it's like if you're believing that somehow God wants you to annihilate yourself and be sacrificial and hang on the cross like Jesus did, and then all of a sudden you're given this first-class trip somewhere, you don't feel worthy of it, or you feel like you're doing something that's counter to what you're supposed to be doing for God. So even though I enjoyed it, it was almost like there was a black cloud hanging over some part of my soul where I couldn't fully enjoy it because I felt a little bit guilty, which was really sick. And maybe that's part of my reason for having to relive that trip in a better way. I don't know. That sounds twisted, but I mean, I enjoyed it, and it was time with my dad, but I realized he was spiritually in a totally different place. Like he had grown up, and church was sort of like a duty. It was a social institution, and we had gone to a Methodist church, but my dad was very duty oriented. He'd been, an Army guy, and just had this sense. He wasn't deep in the sense. I mean, now looking back, I realize he was deep in a different way, but I mean, he didn't buy the whole religious thing lock, stock, and barrel, but right. He was more duty bound. So if this makes sense, like he'd go to church because that was something you did, and he would fulfill any obligation or commitment or whatever. He had integrity, but he didn't spiritualize it in a way where it was all about sacrificing his life for God and doing all this stuff. He didn't really buy into the self-annihilation message so much. Well, for some reason, like when I got interested in, when I wanted to seek, I hate to say religion, but like you're trying to figure out life, right? So religious organizations and churches and cult leaders all try to answer the what's life all about question. So you start digging spiritually and you want to know. And then somehow, I went down the religious rabbit hole trying to figure it out because it's like, well, if God doesn't know, nobody does, So let's try to figure this thing out and get involved in Christianity and religion. And of course, that can go to some dark places because a lot of Christianity is about, taking up your cross and doing all this heavy, deep stuff.
I think we were idealistic too. And it was like an appeal to be like your higher self, and we were chosen, and we were, answering this like amazing call. And
exactly. It sort of appealed to something.
Cults do. Yeah.
Yeah. Almost not necessarily egotistical, but it actually takes advantage of your desire to know the truth and really get to the bottom of what life is about. And I was a seeker. I still am, really. That's why I've got into NDE thing and everything else. I still want to know what's going on and why and how and all that good stuff. And I find it fascinating. And it took a long time for it to become a positive experience because you get led into the whole cult thing. And then again, I've reiterated this point, but I'll make it again, is the idea of like, I just recently really started to grasp the idea that the two driving forces in life are fear and love. And fear will drive every negative thing, and it's what sets people against each other. And even like I was going to touch on this on the relationship thing, and maybe I will, is like even in our relationship, in any relationship, there's a mixture. Like you go in and you feel attracted to somebody, and there's things about them you really love and value, and then but you don't totally understand what's going on. So you go into a relationship and you're carrying your past in with you, and all the trauma and all the stuff you've been through in your life prior to meeting the person. They have the same thing going on, but totally different, right? So now you want to have a relationship and you feel love for this person, but you don't even really know what love is exactly at the time, because part of it's attraction, but another part is sort of like wanting to build a life together, and you're hopeful of something good coming out of it. And maybe you have some common goals, like you want to have a family and kids, and it's all based on things that you feel are good, that'll make your life good. But on the other hand, you're coming in with baggage from bad past relationships, things that have failed, traumatic experiences. So some part of you is guarded and a little bit afraid, like, well, you're taking a risk getting into this relationship because you don't really know the other person at the outset. And yet you have to get past your fear in order to risk getting into the relationship. And then you're going to find out things about the other person. Like in the early stages of a relationship, the idealism fills in all the gaps. Like you don't know much about the person. You just know that you think you like them, and for whatever reason, and you fill in all the gaps. So in your mind, they become this perfect magical person, and that holds up until reality strikes. So then you go through that whole phase, and then you have to deal with, your baggage, their baggage. Can you get past it all? Or do you really share common goals and interests? So anyway, I'm going on a tangent.
Well, I think that, yeah, I mean, you make a lot of good points. And I think that in some ways it was like the cart before the horse, because we knew each other, because we had this whole thing where we would have these prayer circles and we'd have all these, like this communal living where we were like celibate and these like almost asexual in a way. And so like we were living in this bubble, this like fishbowl where there was this constant thing about us like confessing. So I think we knew each other's weaknesses. I think we knew each other in that way, but because we weren't allowed to have a natural romantic relationship that was like developed naturally, it was constantly this like having like you said about having a middleman. It was like we couldn't really develop. We were adults and we had already kind of had relationships, and it's not like we were virgins or anything, but we had to like roll the clock back as if we were like children.
Yeah, you're kind of starting all over, trying to do everything in a pure way.
There was right, and there was like a shame that was attached to it. So when we did start feeling those romantic relationships, we had to stuff them down. And like when you came home and from Alaska and you brought me these earrings, they were these beautiful like abalone shell earrings that a native person had made, and they were absolutely beautiful. But because I felt guilty because like Marlene and the elders hadn't like approved or sanctioned our relationship, that like I didn't feel like I could accept them. And then like we were brought before we were brought before the board and interrogated because you had given me those earrings and I had to give them back. And then you gave me this picture of this thing that you had taken before you left. We had got taken on a walk, and it was fall, and he was taking pictures of like fall leaves, and he gave me a plaque that he had made with the picture that he had taken when we went on this walk, and he wrote something on the back of it, excuse me, which I wasn't aware of because he put a little sticker over it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then you were made to confess and take the sticker off, and I had to give that back as well. So like if you want to show that
this
picture
is bizarre really, because this picture I had made 2 prints of it, and actually with a prior girlfriend Joni, we got into this thing of epoxying and making plaques out of pictures. They were beautiful, and we made tons of them over a period of time. And I had actually taken this picture. It's actually a little bit faded now. It's been 30 years.
30 years. Yeah.
Literally
you made the exact same one for your dad as well.
Yeah. After my dad passed, I wound up with the one my dad had, and it's actually hanging in my office. So it's strangely symbolic. then this one, believe it or not, Marilyn mentioned this to me today, and we have this attic. It's like a crawl space attic.
Oh,
It's
it's in the
been there.
attic.
It was literally in the attic on top of a container, and it's been sitting up in that attic for like 30 years. And yet I had a strange recollection. Like, I think I've seen that up in the attic somewhere. Like, I never got rid of it. I just put it there, and it was symbolic. But, you know, I got to be careful. I'll choke on my tobacco here. But
You have tobacco?
but anyway, yeah. So this is the picture, and I had given it to her. And if you read
If
the
you
date
see
on
it.
that, you'll be shocked.
Yeah. Where's the date? Oh, fall 1992. Oh my God. That was way before. Oh, honey. So you knew back then. That was like 33 years ago. Oh my God. Aw. So I don't know, you're gonna probably cry more, but he wrote something, says to Marilyn, and then how do you pronounce that?
I think it's Hephzibah.
Hephzibah, which is in Hebrew.
Yeah, it has so true confessions. There's no way around this. But when I first met Marilyn early on, like back in 92 or even earlier, I knew I was in love with her. And it was nothing I could tell anyone that would have been accepted, because I was counseled later. It's like, well, that can't be. But I knew in my heart that if I ever got the chance to marry her, I would. I told you I'm choking on my tobacco. But anyhow,
You waited
so
for
back
me to
then,
to come around.
that was 5 years. That was 5 years before we got married. So I literally had to wait 5 years and endure a bunch of stuff that I won't go into detail
A bunch of shit.
until then. And yeah, I could go on with the story, but I'll just say this much. So this was 5 years before we got married. I knew I was in love with her. And I'm like,
I didn't know.
yeah, well, I couldn't. There was
And I
nobody
didn't
I could
know
really
that this
express it
was
to.
there for years, right? And then until
Yeah.
you were made to confess.
Yeah. So that symbolized
And
how
it
I
was
felt
kind of
about
like
her.
it was a lot like that thing with like Scientology where like you want to go up the bridge or whatever, you want to be better, so like they were probably squeezing it out of you because like
Well,
you
yeah.
know you wanted to ascend to God, whatever, like you wanted to grow in your spiritual walk. So to have something like this hidden on my wall that I didn't know that was under it.
Yeah, it probably looked like
Because-
some subversive thing.
And
that
it
they would-
wasn't. Yeah.
No, it wasn't. It was just a genuine,
So what
heartfelt
does
thing.
it mean?
It actually, in the Hebrew, it means my delight is in her.
Aw. I love you. That's sweet. Yeah. So then that, and then around the same time that I found this out, he had come back with these earrings, and I don't have them. I don't know what happened to them.
Yeah,
I
it was a
remember
long
they were
time ago.
broken, and I think maybe they got thrown away. But then he went this time, and they're very similar. They look like
Yeah,
Northern
they're-
Lights. You can see them. So they do look a lot like the ones that he got me back then. So it was like,
Yeah, some kind
Symbolic,
of interesting
yeah.
symbolic redo. Like this time I got to go to Alaska, not hindered by the cult or any of that kind of strange stuff. And, this time I could get her something that,
yeah, they're not getting thrown away.
no. So anyway, that's awfully personal, and I hope I didn't rattle anyone.
Sorry, honey.
But no, it's good. It's actually a true testimony of the fact that, sometimes you just know, and it's like, it's irrational. I was counseled like, that this would be a distraction from God or whatever God wanted for me. And yet looking back now, I know this was what God wanted for me. And, even when
Looking at our kids, it's
I know
obvious, right?
it's like, I feel like I believe in destiny, and I feel like, when we're, every time we see those kids, all three together, like last night, all three of them were singing and doing music together and everything. And sometimes you just know, like Austin was meant to be here. Carter's meant to be here. Haley's meant to be here. They're all different. They're all on different paths. And yet we're part of them. They're part of us. they're part of our life. And I believe it was meant to be. Like, this was all meant to be. And we had to hack our way past a lot of crap. And I feel like even like the whole relationship thing is, I think a lot of people do not necessarily, I wouldn't say give up, like a cowardly thing of giving up on a relationship. I don't think a lot of people, including us at different points, understood what we're really up against. Because a real relationship has to be based on love. But without understanding what love is and what fear is, I don't think people have the tools to even unravel and unpack what they're dealing with. Like, even, Scientology and cult survivors or whatever, looking at past trauma and trying to deal with past trauma, people are so bound up with fear of rejection and of having relationships blow up that they'll blow out of a relationship just because they can't emotionally handle what they're going through, or they don't realize that they're being, they're governed by fear. Until you step away from fear and are willing to take risks and accept it. Like, I had to go through a little transformation over the last few years where I'm like, I actually could embrace the idea, well, you know what? It's okay to fail. I used to be terribly afraid of failure. Like, failure is permanent and it's your undoing. It's not really. If you're trying your best and taking a risk and you screw up and fail, well, that's a risk that you take, and it can happen, and you have to learn from it and move on. And the only people, like, I look at Austin, like, people have actually been cruel enough to tell him, like, when he was younger, you suck. Why? I mean, I'm not saying this is against Haley, but just as a kid thing, when he first started picking up the guitar, he didn't know what he was doing, so he sounded terrible. So people say, you suck. And then when he started singing years later, because he had no vocalist to sing with him, people would say, you suck, you're pitchy, you're off, this. Well, guess what? Austin had the wherewithal and the belief in himself and his passion, his calling, that he was able to dust himself off, get back up, and keep going. And the reason people succeed at things is because they keep going. And people say, don't give up, don't quit. Well, there's times you should give up or quit if you're trying to do something that you're not meant to or you have no skills for. So I can't universally say, well, just never quit, never give up. It's like, no. If you have a passion and you believe deep down that you can do something, that's usually an indication that you're on the right track. Like, for me, okay, so I, when I was younger, at one point I loved music, but I didn't realize I didn't really have the gifts to really make a go of it. So I struggled for an entire year trying to learn simple, basic stuff on a guitar, but I'm not intuitive. That I had to do it very mechanically, and just to get to, I could do some simple 3-chord kind of songs, and I enjoyed the music. But Austin has major talent. It's completely night and day. So my attempting to become like Austin, it wouldn't happen. It couldn't happen. But that's his gift and his passion. So he's following something he was given. So, I think everybody's got stuff like that to run with somewhere, somehow, and in a relationship, I don't know where I'm going with this.
No, it's okay. Well, I brought up the kids.
It's a tangent.
Yeah,
I brought up the kids, they're like a testimony that they were meant to be. And I totally believe that.
Yeah.
They were meant to be.
I think that, jumping forward, like when we left the cult, it was like we almost had to get to know ourselves again and each other. And I just remember, like, thinking, did we choose to be together? Because we kind of had asked permission. And then I realized later on, I was like, yes, we do love each other. But it was almost like one of those things that I had to kind of just come to terms with what was me and what was like the cult, and what, like, whether we really did like love each other or if we would just kind of throw them together.
To each other.
Right. But even seeing the back of that picture when you were told no, or that you couldn't even tell anybody that you liked me, and so I feel like our relationship has, like, kind of ebbed and flowed in some ways, because they say, when you first get together, it's all like fuzzy feelings and love and all that. And then, actually, I think it was Julia that said about communication. Relationships are work, right? Love sometimes is not enough. Communication is key. Yeah. And it's not up to a community, cult leadership, anybody. It's not up to anybody to tell you that you should or shouldn't be together.
Nobody else can really know. I think that's true. That's the thing.
People.
You have to know. And Joel put a comment up here. Okay, in life, many times our children save us. I'm totally sure they saved Duncan O'Malley. You know what? You're right.
They saved us from the call. I mean, they were the ones that got us out of there.
And you go through rough times in life where I've had a few times that were rough enough. So there's times you just want to throw in the towel and give up completely. And the fact we have those kids so many times has given me a reason to get up in the morning and say, you know what, buck up, dude. You can't quit. You've got people to live for that are really need you and care for you. And that's a driving, excellent motive, and even so, here's another thing too, is Austin, there's some of his songs that are so poignant. If you listen to the words, some of his originals of shit that he went through. And even, I think this even applies to what we went through when we had a very rough time and the kids were young. I think Austin, the fact that he could turn to his music actually saved him. And then it's almost like when bad turns good. Like, I think it's one of the mysteries of the universe, or whatever you want to say, is the fact that sometimes a very terrible thing can become the motive that drives you and makes you able to offer something to other people. Because like when Austin gets up and performs and does the stuff he's doing, he was compelled, like he went into that and threw his life into it because that saved him. It gave him joy and gave him something to offer the world. And now a lot of people, like even last night, right? So you've got this crazy bar, but we got 100 people having a blast because he's followed his passion to do music, and his brother and sister jumped in and other people jump in, the drummer and the keyboard guy. Everybody's having a good time. They're making money and they're bringing a lot of people a lot of pleasure. And to me, that's a huge contribution to the world in a weird way. It's just a great time. Austin's a great guy. People love him. He's knows how to deal with people and everything, but painful things in his life were turned into something valuable that he could offer. So
it's great to see all three siblings. They've gotten so close. I mean, they've always been like, in a way, like three separate, very different people, but also like a unit. They look after each other.
They do.
And
they really do.
I've talked to my people about our time when we basically separated for 3 months, and I don't want to go into it because I'll start crying. And I've apologized to you many, many times for what I did. And I felt like, I had to like almost get away from things to know, like to appreciate really what I had, and I realized I didn't want to be apart from you. And I knew that the two younger, kids, the boys, when I was gone for just a couple months, 2.5, 3 months, they would come to see me. But they stayed with you because I knew that you needed them. Because I knew you needed them. And like I needed them too, but I didn't want anything to happen to you. And when we went to like an arbitrator, and we were like we were talking about possibly getting a divorce, and we were basically tripping over ourselves to make sure the other person was going to be okay. And the mediator was like, "What are you doing here? I've been doing this for 25 years and I've never seen a couple so in love, and so worried about each other." I realized that like we were just not communicating, like Julia said, that we did love each other, and there's nothing wrong if we had decided not to, not to get back together. That's okay. Like, I'm not saying, like, I think that's so horrible that people feel pressured. They have to get back together. They have to for the kids, stay married. That is a personal choice,
Yeah.
But I think in our case, we were meant to be together, and we're better together.
No, I totally agree. And I agree too, is like, there's thousands, and some people theorize that there's all these alternate lives all existing at the same time, and that you can take 1,000 paths and live through all of them all at the same time, which is bizarre and is sort of an NDE thing. But on the other hand, I do believe like we chose a path, we were able to stay on it and rebuild things, and they got better. And now I feel closer. I feel like we're closer now than we ever have been, because when you go through something really rough together and survive it, it definitely bonds you. You go through that and you gain something from it. So painful as that was, I think we got through it, and we were, it was meant to be. I feel like in a way it was meant to be, for whatever reason, and here we are.
Yeah, here we are. So, yeah, you want to show your pictures from this trip?
Sure.
Someday we should show the pictures from your other trip too, but they're very
yeah.
faded.
Yeah, they're in an old album I
very
was
dark.
actually taking out.
All right, let's switch.
See what we can find here.
Maybe we can rate. I'll read some of these comments and then we'll show the pictures.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Glad you all are here. Kelly.
Oh, Kelly's here.
Yeah,
Hi, Kelly.
Kelly's here.
Cool. Yeah, I appreciate everybody that's here. Oh yeah. Cool.
What
Oh yeah, you streamed the
Love Bites. Well, I was thinking of the Def Leppard song, like "Love Bites, Love Please, take me to my knees" or something like that. Bring me to my knees. You know that song?
I actually
Def
don't.
Leppard?
That was before my time.
Def Leppard?
Or after my time.
After your time.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, that was.
Love
Yeah,
Bites.
I don't know when that came out, but I kind of missed that phase.
I like to put earworms in people's ears. Hey, Becky USA. Oh, the boys concert. Yeah, I did stream some of the boys.
Yeah, that's very cool.
concert,
Yeah, that was a
and
lot of
Haley
fun.
singing with them and stuff.
Yeah, no, that was a blast. It really was.
I'm glad that in Germany, talking about your religiosity or what you believe is not something you talk about, like your salary in the U.S. Yeah, that probably would be good. Instead of some people shove it down people's throats, which isn't. I don't think it's a good thing.
Cool.
I never truly believed love until my daughter was born. Yeah.
Yeah, somehow. Yeah, it does change everything.
It does.
Well, yeah, Marilyn would tell you, like, I was never really a kid person until we had our own kids. When they're your own flesh and blood and you see yourself, like, here's a funny little story you'll laugh at. But I had this little crook in my ear. And when Haley was born, it was like, I don't know, within a day or two, I realized she had the exact same thing on her ear.
So you know
it was a weird little genetic.
She's yours.
Group. Yeah, so it was just a confirmation. So we joke about that sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. I remember that so funny. Actually giving up on love till I met Stacey. Aww.
Well, we're very happy for you guys.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to seeing you.
I know. I can't wait to see you guys.
It's gonna be very cool.
Oh, Stacey, Spiria. Oh, now I hate Marlene even more. She was so fucking vile. I'm telling you.
Yeah. I think some part of her meant well early on because things started out one way and got more oppressive with time.
Yeah, but this was like weird. Her not her first rodeo though. This was like her second cult that she founded. And then this time she didn't have her husband, so she was like on her own drunk with power, I think.
Yeah.
Buttercup 49. I learned all relationships are different. What works for one couple may differ from another couple.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Totally. Have. Oh my God, I love you too so much.
Love you too.
We love you. Paula. I want that kind of love.
Oh.
It's work, but it's worth it.
It is. Yeah, you get kind of ripped open sometimes, but I don't know.
Oh, Jesus wept. That's the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. Now I am. Stop crying. Now we're all crying.
I know. I feel like a total sap man. I can't hold it in sometimes.
Someone's cutting. I told you we needed tissues. I thought that was for me, though.
Well, I knew some of this stuff was going to be hard to relive.
I know. It was so fucking painful.
Well, yeah. You go through some shit.
So mean. They were so fucking mean.
Yeah. No, we went through a lot of garbage there, but I don't know.
Yeah, just the mind fuck of it all. I know. I swear.
Yeah, I mean, you learn.
So mad.
Yeah. No, you learn from a lot. Like now, I feel armed against having, going through that kind of crap again. But yet, sadly, everybody's got to learn their own stuff too.
This is why I'm like, Marlene, Everybody partake. F you, Marlene. She's so vile.
I'm just so glad we're out from under that, man. That was just terrible.
Forces life religion. It's awfully foggy. Aw, you guys. It's really sweet.
Well, I'm glad you're sharing this experience with us and hopefully can gain something out of it.
Yeah, and you know what? That's one of the things, one of the reasons why I hate the whole purity culture thing. Because it forces you to deny your own feelings and look to some, like nebulous God or these like if you watch the Duggars, that whole courtship thing, that's the kind of stuff we would have to do. And it was like the elders of the church and because we didn't have fathers or mothers or whatever to tell us what to do. But yeah, it was like that. It was like we couldn't do anything without permission. And then here we are, like I was 26 and he was almost 38 when we got married. We were fully grown adults. We knew, like, we had relationships before, so
yeah,
we knew where everything went. But can you imagine being like young kids, like virgins? Like, that's terrible, And even with us, it was like so hard to deal with because it was like we were supposed to stuff down our emotions and our love and everything, our like physical desires, everything for so many years that all of a sudden it was like, okay, now,
then all of a sudden you're cut loose. Again, that's another source to me of cognitive dissonance. You got to live by this set of rules. They're really rigid, really strict. You got to be very ascetic and self-denial. And all of a sudden, bing. Okay, now you're free to do whatever you want. What? Wait a second. I've been
as long as this mission
hammered
position
into me. Yeah, you've been
very much like all our age, like
you get hammered, indoctrinated with all this stuff, and then all of a sudden somebody's trying to change the rules on you, and it messes with your head.
And even then, they were like controlling us, like what we did when we were on vacation, how we had sex, like everything was like it was still shame. It was still like you could only do certain things and all that, and it was oh my god. Just
you know what?
And she looked at us like we were some kind of like. Prize too. It was like, oh look, I put
she wanted
them
to be
together.
Able to take credit for something she had opposed.
Yeah, exactly.
But one thing I was going to throw in there is this idea, like I see this totally play out in cults, especially like Scientology, is like the love-fear thing. Love has a degree of trust and hope and positive stuff baked into it, where fear is what breeds distrust. Distrust breeds a snitch culture, interrogations. They're fearing things going wrong, fearing the cult looking bad, fearing like letting it's trusting people to talk and have relationships and maybe screw up, make mistakes. Part of that whole fear thing, and it's negative, and it just brings everything down. And perfectionism is the same thing, because perfectionism is excellence is a good thing. I always preach this thing of go for excellence because it's achievable. Perfection is not achievable. You try to go that one extra step for perfection, and now you're bogged down in analysis paralysis and fear of failure and your punishment and all this kind of stuff. It's like, no, you got to be free in order to grow, you got to be free to make mistakes. You got to be able to take risks. As soon as you can't take any risks, it's like everybody's got to be wrapped in bubble wrap and in, hermetically sealed cages. You can't let your kids do anything fun because they might get hurt. No. Be reasonably careful, but you're going to get hurt. You're going to screw up. That's why the body heals itself, because it gets hurt. So you got to think that way. Healing is only necessary because people get hurt. Shit happens. And if you're not willing to let any shit happen, you're not going to do anything. That's one reason, even though this Alaska trip represented part of my breaking out of fear and stuff like that, do something. Get out of your comfort zone. Take some risks. You might get killed, but hey, if you're destined to go on and live, then you'll probably survive. So it's like my attitude's changed a lot. I used to be governed by a lot of fear. So part of the last few years for me is breaking out of that box. Like there's a song, Rusty Cage. And I love that song because it symbolized like I'm breaking out of my rusty cage, damn it. Like I'm done being in fear.
Yeah. Yeah. The fact that you're that you're building the house and taking risks with that. And
that's a risk.
Yeah.
But it's been a hilarious, fun adventure, and I got a lot of work to do, let me tell you. But I felt like I need this. It's going to make me grow and learn and think, and I'm going to screw up and make some mistakes, but hey,
we're trying to fend off Alzheimer's. So
so I got to rush and get things done while I still can.
No, they say like do puzzles and think.
It keeps your
challenge
brain
yourself.
Functioning.
Yeah,
that's part of
read
it
a couple
too.
More.
The day you sit down and stop moving, you're done.
Oh, this is really sweet. Thank you so much for the super chat, Anna. Anna from Canada. So much love to you, Jim Merrill, and you have helped me more than you know.
No, that's
you all have helped us so much too. Thank you so much.
Now we're all in this thing together.
Yeah. And Joel McCoy. Oh, thank you so much, Joel. I am proud to find you both and your wonderful kids. Thank you. Joel is such an amazing support to our kids too. Like he's just
Yeah.
always really cheering them on. I appreciate that so much. He had another comment I wanted to pull up. My observation, Carter wanted to learn to play. Austin needed to do it.
You know what?
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. It was burning in him. It was just something there waiting to come out.
Absolutely. And it's so cool to see them together, and especially like Haley, all three of them. It's like nothing does my heart better.
It's just, and it's like we can't take credit. We're blessed by them being able to do all this stuff, but now they're on their own. We're not making them do it. We're not telling them to do it. You know, in fact, last night it was funny. We were sort of reminiscing about the fact that, you know, things pop up on Facebook, like the memories things going back 6-7 years.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, wow, like I was blown away by
he was really good
primitive stuff.
Yeah.
And he was good then. And back when they first got going, they didn't really have a band. Now they've had a band, the same people together for like 4 or 5 years now. They're really tight, and they're recognized locally as really local talent. They're being sought after by people, and they're professional level. And when they first started out, we were the roadies. We were, you know, packing the gear and driving them around and helping them set up and take down their stuff, and, you know, being involved, you know, very involved. And now they've got this thing down. Like they driving, like, I don't think they'll go tonight because it's supposed to snow, but I mean, they're getting gigs from Brattleboro, which is more than an hour away, South County, you know, an hour in about every direction and sometimes further. And it used to be they were scratching to try to line up gigs and calling people and going through, you know, agent type people that make money by finding venues for them to play. And now, like, they're struggling to keep up with the requests they're getting, and they're opening for some bigger acts. And I'm like, it's a slow, steady growth thing.
This
that's
weekend's
good,
packed
you know?
with
they're
kids.
doing like 3 gigs a weekend now, mostly.
No,
So,
I want to ask you, do you want to do like, we're already at an hour. Do you want to do a separate stream with your pictures so we're not rushing?
I mean, we could do that. Yeah, rather than just tagging them in.
Let's just show a few.
Yeah, we can show
and then
a few.
you can do a longer thing, because I feel like you're going to want to narrate every single picture.
I mean,
and
yeah,
that could be 15 minutes for each one.
So I mean, this has been mostly about relationship stuff.
Yeah,
which is cool.
So this is where you stayed.
Yep.
We can run through a few of them, and then we can. That's where you stayed.
So this is near Fairbanks. That wasn't one of my better pictures. It's hard to pick them out. They're tiny in your phone.
Oh,
moose were everywhere up there. That was one of the craziest things.
Cool.
So, I mean, some of them were huge. These ones were just like in the woods, and they're not
call
like,
those
too
like
big.
Cows or something?
Yeah, they were too big. But I mean,
women, are they female?
Yeah, I think so. But we were in fact, the problem is trying to get pictures of some of these moose, because we had them jump out in the middle of the road with, you know, big moose. I mean, these animals are huge. And here's the funny thing. Marilyn and Haley and everybody was, oh, be careful, get bear spray. Be worried about bears.
Yeah.
Guess what? Bears hibernate in the winter, and none of them came out. We never saw a single bear, but we saw moose all over. And they said, no, they're the ones to watch for. They're big, they're huge, they're not afraid of anything, and they can be more aggressive. And we had the guy that drove us up to the Arctic Circle in a van saying he had actually been, and this had happened to me, and I never talked to anyone that had ever had it happen before. But back probably 10 years ago, while we were living at this house, I had a moose charge me. It came racing across the backyard. I was carrying a bag of garbage over to the shed to throw it in a trash can, and all of a sudden I hear crashing. I look over, and there's this full-size bull moose racing at me with its antlers down, and I thought I was dead. I honestly did. I'm like, holy shit. I just looked, and I froze in my place, and this moose ran up to me, and at the absolute last second, it steered around me, ran around me twice, about as close as he can get, still make the turn, and raced up in the woods. And I thought I was going to have a heart attack. My heart was doing like 500.
So it was huge. I saw it out the window.
It was huge. And I was like, holy shit. And then it turned out this driver is like, yep, that's what they will do. So
this was on the Dalton Highway. So this is
that's a famous little place.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, that's me. And it was 30 below zero, more than 30 below zero. So we were dressed about as warm as we could and still cold. So yeah, I looked kind of stiff there. Yeah, for a reason.
And this is like, cold. It wasn't light very long.
No, it was only light from like 10 to 3 at the time
5 hours.
We were there. So yeah, so this is a beautiful road. I don't think that's the Dalton Highway there. That's one that goes out to these hot springs that are natural hot springs that are 2 hours away, and the roads were all ice because it rained like 7 inches a couple days before we got there. So, you know, I was driving a rental car with basically all weather tires on glare ice for days. So I was a little nervous all the time, but
I can't believe they didn't give you
gorgeous,
decent
though.
tires.
no, the rental
Who's
places
this?
don't.
The
That's
hot
a
spring-
random guy at the hot springs. But what he did,
Look at his
he
hair.
did the hair thing. I didn't have enough
Oh my
hair
God.
to do that with, so I had to take a picture of this guy. But it was
It's like
literally
icicle?
like 25 below zero out, and the water was 105. So
Oh my
what you
God.
would do is, like, when you started, your upper body started to freeze, you just duck underwater and it would melt all the ice off. So it was like you're swimming around in this 105-degree water, and you had to be careful not to stay in it too long. Because Al at one point was in it too long and he got dizzy and was like barely able to walk. So we'd go
Oh, yeah.
get out of there, cool down, get back in, and so that was a while. But that guy was funny because he was just digging the fact that he had frozen up
All right,
hair.
so we'll leave it at that as like kind of
That's
a tease. Okay.
Yeah. more to come.
Yeah, we should try to take some of your pictures from your other Alaska
Yeah.
trip too, and kind of compare them.
Yeah,
So
that'd be cool.
you were in the water there. You were like on a boat,
Yeah,
and I remember
it was a
seeing some of your
different season,
glaciers.
yeah.
Oh yeah, I was.
yeah. It was like when it was 22 hours of
summer.
light instead of dark.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I know that you have a meeting, a Zoom meeting, right? In about an hour or so.
What is it? Yeah, it's at 4, so it's not immediate, but
Okay.
we'll
so-
save some for next time.
Yeah.
Good talking to y'all.
Julia, I don't like any kind of high control. Yeah. Us either.
Nope. Freedom means not being highly controlled.
Mm-hmm. Old Frizz family is everything. Absolutely.
Totally.
That moose was a narcissist.
Yeah, you know,
Oh,
that,
you're gonna
yeah,
get me in
he
trouble.
wanted the whole territory. He didn't want me in the middle of it from the state of Vermont.
Oh my God, that's
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for letting us share, and thank you for sharing, honey. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, it's
I
always
did the
good.
same
It's
thing to
always
Cheryl
good.
the other day. I made her cry like 5 minutes into our stream.
Well, you know, you're digging deep into your emotional
Yeah,
past.
I
and
mean,
say
this
your
whole cult
life.
thing. It definitely it makes you vulnerable talking about it. And
Well, you know,
Yeah.
you relive stuff, and I don't know, like we both. I don't know if you have to be an empath to have this happen, but when you relive stuff, it's real. Like your emotions come flooding back, and it's hard to. You can't stuff them.
yeah,
You know, I mean, that's how you heal from stuff. I believe that if you relive stuff and let yourself feel and experience it, it hurts, but it purges it out somehow. You know.
yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. We're gonna take off. We got to get ready for our trip on Tuesday.
That's
so
right. Yeah.
and
That'll
do
be
some
fun.
laundry and stuff. But thank you, everybody, for being here, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.
Take care.
Xenu, Marlene, everybody partake. Cheers. This is good coffee. This is why, my hubby makes the coffee.